everyone. So I am here for the first part of the journal making series. Now I have to tell you guys, the intros to my videos, as you guys know, if you watched my previous video, I am learning Adobe Premiere. I lost my previous editing software and I really have like no idea what I'm doing at the moment. I'm just trying to get these videos up, so don't judge me too harshly on like the whole video production thing. Anyway, I'm going to just jump right in and get started. So the first thing, just kind of going back to some journal making basics, is I like to start with my signature page. And so what I do is I take the covers that I'm going to use for my journal and take measurements from those covers. So for example, the ones that I'm using, they have a height of about 9 inches. And then when I go to measure the width, I want to make sure that I double the width when I cut my cardstock that I'm going to use for my signature page. So for example, the width on this particular cover is about 5 3/4. So when I go to make that cut on my paper, I'm going to double that width and cut at 11.5 inches for the width. I hope that makes sense. And I'm going to demonstrate this for all of you. Now, if you make the mistake and you don't double it and you cut your page, it's going to be the same size as your cover. And that's fine. You can just use that for the inside part of your journal if you do forget to double the width when you're cutting your signature page. I've done it quite a few times actually, but that's one thing that you can do if you make that mistake. Okay, so I'm going to pick out my cardstock that I want to use for my signature page and cut according to the measurements that I took from my book cover. So it's going to be at the 9 inches in height, and then my width again is going to be at that 11.5 inches. And so you guys want to make sure that you use your measurements for your covers and not use the measurements that I'm using because I've done that before. Okay. Now I am going to want to fold my signature page in half, and I like to use a bone folder to get a nice clean edge. So the bone folder that you see me using here, it came straight from my visit from London. I went to this amazing art supply store and I spent way too much money and I had way too much fun. Oh, and of course I had to get my mom one too, which she loved, by the way. I'm getting sidetracked here. Like I said, I'm still getting used to this whole voiceover thing in this new program, but it's all fun, right guys? So the next thing I'm doing is with the leftover piece, I'm going to create a flap. As you guys know, if you watched any of my previous videos, I love to use flaps because it's great to use these to hang journal cards from, or envelopes, cards, whatever it might be. And I will show you that as I start to build my pages. So now I'm just trying to figure out what other things I want to incorporate within my signature. And so I'm thinking maybe I might put a pocket here, use the bag to create some sort of pocket. And now I have my paper bag cut to size, and I'm just going to figure out here what I'm going to do with these pieces. So this is where the creative process comes into play. Usually I have absolutely no idea or pre-planned way of how I'm going to create my pages. It's just kind of working with things, laying them on my page, seeing how I might be able to use this or that, how I might be able to create a hinge from it possibly. So that's what I'm doing here, is just figuring out what is my next step going to be. So I'm going to fold my lined paper. And again, I wanted to make sure I use my bone folder to make sure I get a nice clean edge on my paper. And so this is going to be my first journal page within my signature. And I think I'm going to add in some sort of flap maybe, or some sort of hinge here. So I decide that I'm going to use one of the envelopes from my digital collection, Collaged Rose. Now again, if you don't have this exact envelope in your kit, you can use the one that you did receive. Or if you want to create this journal, you didn't get the kit, but you want to create something like what I'm doing, you can always purchase this collection at mydreamsetc.com website. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, and I'll be more than happy to help you guys with any questions that you might have. Now I'm just folding my envelope, and at this point I don't want to apply any adhesive. I don't want to stick anything down because I'm not exactly sure if this is how I want to have my journal page be. I'm just putting ideas together at this point. So, later on I might change my mind, and I want to have that option. One other tip when you're creating your journal pages is don't adhere anything down quite yet. Just kind of, we're at the process of where we just want to kind of figure out what we're going to use in our journal pages, what elements we're going to use. So I'm going to just look through again the items that I have. I might want to cover up this bag, use some of the fabrics, create a pocket, just trying to gather some sort of idea of what it is I want to do next. And then when all else fails, you can always grab a tag. Oh, I use a lot of tags in my journals. They're wonderful. You can decorate them. One thing I do like to recommend, or one tip, is adding something that has the image of a face or an old photo, such as a cabinet card. It just creates a focal point for your journal page. So if you're at a loss and you just don't know what you want to do with that page, grab a tag that has, again, a picture of a lady, or add a cabinet card, or something again that has the image of a face. It just draws people in, it creates a focal point, and it adds interest to your page. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to add this tag, and then I'm thinking I want to create some sort of pocket onto that paper bag. And then I'm also going to add a coffee stained paper. I usually add one of these in each of my signatures. So now I'm starting to get some elements, some journal pages for my signature. Now I want to again try to figure out pockets and flaps and building those layers within my journal pages. So that is going to be the next step of what I want to do. Now, a lot of people ask, how many journal pages do you usually have within a signature? That's pretty much up to you. I usually do between 4 or 5 pages within a signature page. So when you fold them, you're going to have about 10 pages to your signature. And that's just an average amount that I use. Sometimes I might use less, sometimes I might use more. It just kind of depends on how I'm going to layer everything and what, the thickness that my signature ends up being as I build my layers onto each page. So I take that into consideration. So what I'm doing here is, again, trying to keep in mind journaling space. I want to make sure I have many areas where I can journal. And I thought that using the graph paper on top of the paper bag would give me that journaling space that I like to have in each page. And now I'm just going to figure out how I might want to use some of the ephemera pieces, how I'm going to incorporate those, how I'm going to decorate each page. And so these sentiments are wonderful to use. I love these ones in particular because they're such a nice size, and you can really build and layer with the sentiments that I'm using from this digital collaged rose collection. Again, these are printed onto 110-pound white cardstock. I use the Georgia Pacific brand, and we print from a laser printer. I prefer laser over inkjet. I believe the colors are more vibrant, more crisp from a laser. I also like the use of toner. I can print hundreds of copies before needing to replace toner. One of my favorite printers that I've ever used, and I highly recommend it. And if you can still get your hands on one, I know the price is going up on these, but it is the HP, the HP LaserJet Pro M as in Mary, 251, N as in Nancy, W. So again, that's the HP LaserJet Pro M251NW. And I will list that in the description of this video. Okay, so as you guys can see, again, I'm just figuring out how I want to decorate my pages. I think I'm going to implement some fabrics into my journal page. And now I have an idea of, where I want to place my flaps, how I want to hinge everything together. And I really try to think of different ways on how to create pages and how I'm going to hinge them together. And that was one thing I hope you guys really learned from this, is different ways of doing that. And so that's what I'm going to show you here in just a little bit. Now, again, I'm cutting some of these journal cards because I need to have that journaling space. I want to make my journal pages pretty but functional, and you guys probably hear me say that a lot. It's just sometimes we can get a little carried away with the prettiness and then forget, oh my gosh, I have absolutely no place to journal, and then it just becomes more of an art journal than an actual functional journal. And I like to incorporate both into my journals. So here I'm just figuring out how I want to use that flap, and as you can see, this is why I love flaps, because you can just do so much with them, and it creates that layering effect to your journal page. So I think I'm going to cut more of the journal cards, and again, this is from the Collaged Rose collection. I usually try to mix things up, have sentiments, things that, the front, it's decorative, but if you flip it over on the back, you have your journaling space. So that's the wonderful thing about these journal cards. And again, I'm just figuring out how I want to layer my page here. Okay, so I decided that I'm going to use one of those beautiful floral plate illustrations in my signature. So I'm just going to take this and cut it down a little bit, figure out what pieces I might want to use. So I might use just the picture, or I might take the title from the page and use it elsewhere. It's wonderful to take words, cut them out, and build the sentiment onto your journal page. Okay, so now I think I'm going to cut some of this fabric, thinking I might want to use it to create a hinge in putting together some of my journal pages. I like to be pretty creative with the way I build my journal pages, try to add that added interest to them and not just have it be your standard typical hinge. So yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to put all of this together now at this point. So we have everything that we need for a signature as far as the basics, and the foundation pages within our signature. And now it's time for the fun part where we really get to get creative and start decorating and building those hinges and building those layers. And I decided that I'm going to take one of those sections that I cut in the very beginning that I was going to use as my signature page to create a shorter page within my signature, just to give that layered effect. And I don't care if the edges are sticking out. I actually want some edges to stick out from my signature so I can add sentiments there, or maybe I want to add some tabs there and have them stick out. Alrighty guys, so we're moving right along. Now I think what I'm going to do is just kind of go through everything one more time, make sure I have everything placed the way that I want it, see if I want to add any additional pages, or if I'm liking the way everything is being built within my signature so I can continue on to adhering things down and get to the decorating part of my journal pages. So I'm going to go ahead, and you guys can just kind of sit back and we'll do this little quick overview. I'm going to put some music on and then I'll be back to go over some of those next steps. Okay, so as you guys saw, I was adding more to my journal pages, adding in some journaling cards and some lined papers, tags, and so forth. So now I want to try and figure out how I want to adhere everything together and go into more of the decorating parts of this whole journal making process here. So what I'm going to do is just kind of go back to the beginning and figure out piece by piece what I want to adhere down. So to start with, I'm going to take the floral themed illustration plate, and you can see where I folded it to kind of create a hinge, and I'm just going to put glue on the top and bottom because I want to create a little pocket there, and then I can insert a journal card or something later on. So I just want to make sure to glue the top and the bottom and not glue the middle section there. And then I think for my envelope, I'm going to just glue down the bottom section for now because I might want to have it where I use the top section of the envelope as my pocket insert. So for now, I'm just going to glue down the bottom and wrap it around my journal page. And I'm going to go ahead and glue down the flap. Again, just gluing the top and bottom because I love to create pockets, as many pockets as I possibly can. It's an easy way to layer on your journal pages is if you create these little pockets, because that's where you can insert all your little journal cards and so forth. And now I'm going to add in one of my middle larger flaps, as well as lined paper with a smaller flap in the center of that. And I'm thinking what I'm going to do is take a piece of the fabric, which I've already cut down, and I'm going to stitch that and that section of the flap okay, so I already stitched it. Wow, I'm fast. I'm so fast. I didn't even see myself do that. Okay, so what I did is I stitched the middle section of that flap there, and then I stitched the top and bottom sections of that fabric. And now I'm going to insert some tags and journal cards into those pockets. So I'm just going to kind of play around here and see what I like and just grab, what I can find as far as journal cards, sentiments, and so forth to see how I want to decorate my pages. Now I'm thinking I want more texture, so as you could see, I added in that yellow piece of fabric, and I think I'm going to use that to hinge my page to that signature page. So I went ahead and I just kind of placed that down so I wouldn't forget, because sometimes you get going and then you forget these ideas that you have. So I just kind of placed that down for now, and later I think I'm going to go ahead and stitch that down, or I might end up gluing it down. I'm not sure yet, but I think I want to use that. And then I'm just using this chalk edger to add some color to the edges of my pages. And these are the Prima chalk edgers. I love these. I'm not sure if they're going to continue carrying them. I know that a lot of people complained that the sponge part would fall off, but a dab of glue and it's back together again. They hold a lot of ink and they're pretty durable. I mean, they last through a whole journal without having to replace it. But if you have a makeup sponge and some Distress Oxide or Distress ink, you can use that in place of these chalk edgers. They work just as good. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I think I'm going to take one of my newer stamps. This is my fabric collage stamp. You can purchase this from my dreamsetc.com site. And if you guys do purchase from my site and you would like me to autograph any of the stamps that you purchase from me, I'm more than happy to do that for you guys. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ink this top section of the stamp. I'm using the VersaFine ink. This is a wonderful pigment ink. It does dry slower because it is a pigment ink. It's really good if you like to emboss with it. I should have heat set it and I didn't, and you'll see later on that I create a nice smudgy mess, but I'll show you guys ways to kind of hide some of those smudges if this happens to you. And then I think I'm also going to stamp onto some of the coffee stained paper. So I'm going to go ahead and re-ink my stamp. Only this time I think I'm going to use a different section of the stamp. So I'm going to use the top part and then use maybe this middle bottom section of the stamp. And before I do that, I'm going to wipe off the ink from the top part because I don't want that getting onto the top part of the paper when I go to restamp with this. And I just use some Purell and baby wipes and it cleans the stamps wonderfully. So I'm just picking the sections that I want to stamp onto my page and inking those sections. And then I'm just kind of eyeing where I want to stamp it. It doesn't have to be perfect, and that's a great thing about using a collage stamp is it doesn't have to be perfect. It's pretty forgiving. These are wonderful stamps. They're made of white rubber and very detailed. They're just really easy to stamp with. As you can see, I'm not even using a block, and it picks up all that wonderful detail. Okay, so you can see a little bit of stamp work. It adds a lot to your page. And if you don't have this stamp, you could use whatever stamps you might have on hand. I just, I think it adds so much. And don't be afraid to take some of your stamps and collage with them. You can create your own collages with stamps. In fact, I have a video showing how I did that. And so yeah, you can do a lot to some of your blank pages just by simply, doing a little bit of stenciling and then a little bit of stamping. So I'm going to go ahead and take my stencil here, and I do have these available again for sale at my shop, my dreamsetc.com site. And I probably should be using one of my daubers to do this, but I'm kind of being lazy here and just using my chalk edger. I just want to get that rose section of the stencil just to kind of make it pop on the page, add a little bit of, that beautiful pink color to my page there. And now I think I'm going to just take and use a little bit of this pink lace trim and just kind of add a little more texture to my page. And that's easy to do with just a little bit of lace, and I think I might even add a little wooden button there over the lace. So I'm just going to take and glue all of that down onto my little piece of ledger paper here. And then what I'm also going to want to do is probably back it with something that's more substantial, whether it be cardstock or an index card. I want to have it also where I'm able to journal on the back of it. So I'll be showing that here in a little bit. Just with the weight of the lace and the button, it starts to weigh that paper down. And so if you have this happen, just simply cut a piece of your heavier cardstock to the back, and then you have a nice sturdy journal card here. Okay, so I think I might use a little piece of this yellow fabric, again just adding more texture to my page. I'm still not quite sure how I'm going to put this page together, so just taking little bits and pieces here and there and playing with them, playing around with the page and laying things down and seeing how it looks. It gives me those ideas to help me finish my page. And you guys will see me do that a lot, is I will take and I'll build up a page and then I'll decide, no, maybe I'm going to try a different way. And I'm hoping that this shows you guys all the different ways and possibilities that you can create your pages. Now, when I was talking about when I smudged my paper up, this is what I do. I take my stencil and some Distress Oxide and I just go over those smudges, and now instead of a smudged up piece of paper, I have a distressed piece of paper. Just those little things, you know? Okay, so at this point, I'm deciding what I want to use for the back of my ledger paper here and figuring out how I want to lay all this down. And I'm kind of liking this little added piece of yellow fabric, so I might take and just glue that down to the edge there. Again, playing around with different colors, different textures, different sized elements. It's what creates that character and interest to your page. All right, so now let's see. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a larger tag using this piece of cardstock. And so this way, you know, by using my larger tag as a template, I can create multiple tags from the 12 by 12 cardstock. So this is just another way to, you know, if you want more tags, this is a way you can do it. Is just use your larger tags or your smaller tags and use them as a template to create more tags. And as I said earlier, I don't think you could ever have enough tags. I use them a lot and they just add a beautiful layering effect to your pages. So I might take and place my little stamped piece of ledger paper here and place it on top of the tag, add in a little sentiment. Sentiments are wonderful too. And as I was saying, adding in that little focal point picture of this lady here, or you know, you could size down a cabinet card, whatever, just it adds a lot to have an image of someone's face on a tag or a journal page. It just creates that focal point. Okay, so now I'm just going to figure out where I want to put this. Kind of liking the white background, so I might work with it there. Or I might just not even do that and just, like I said, might try something different. So here's where you guys can see me kind of play around with everything, and maybe you can come up with some ideas of what you might want to try in your journals, or if you're following along, you purchased the kit and you want to make this page, maybe you decide to do something different from what I end up doing. The main thing is, you know, just have fun with it and play around with your pages. Don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to use those scissors and cut up your fabrics, cut up your trims into smaller pieces and collage, you know, with your stamps and stencils and so forth. And just, you know, have fun, play around. Don't be afraid of making a mistake. This is, after all, what you're supposed to be calling a junk journal. So, you know, embrace the imperfection. And yeah, you know, some of the best things I think I've done have been the things where I made mistakes, and that's how you learn. And that's how you grow in your whole creative process, is through those mistakes. All right, so what I'm doing here is I'm just creating a pocket for my tag. And later you guys are going to see me get out my Martha Stewart edge punch. If you guys don't have one of these, I highly recommend going on eBay and seeing if you can still get one. She doesn't make them anymore. They're wonderful to just grab every now and then, and they add that little decorative element to your page. And so, yeah, I can't recommend it enough. If you guys don't have one, see if you can possibly get your hands on one still. So that's what I'm doing here, is I'm just adding that little decorative element with this punch, and then I'm going to glue on my little piece here for my pocket for my tag. And I think I might use the punch on the edge of that smaller flap there, the piece that I'm using to create my pocket, just to kind of soften that edge up a little bit. You could use one of the roses, that looks kind of pretty. And of course I want my sentiment. Or I'm trying to think, you know, I don't want to bulk my page up too much, so I might just decide that I'm going to use a little bit of this lace trim. And I'm liking that, so I'm going to go ahead and glue that down. And you know, you could use other trims. I just wanted to make a point of using everything strictly from the kit, aside from, you know, the punches and stamps and stencils, those sort of things. But main goal is, as far as the items, the tags, you know, the papers, they come strictly from the kit, and I'm not using any additional items because that was one of the things I really wanted to show, is how you could create a beautiful journal from using the kit. And then again, if you don't have the kit and you have scraps that you want to use, you have just a bunch of pieces of fabric and trim that you're trying to use, this, I'm hoping, is a good learning process or a good video to watch, and giving you guys ideas of how you can use all those little pieces and scraps and so forth. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to glue my sentiment down, and I'm just going to glue the sides and bottom because I want to create another pocket. Again, as I stated previously, creating pockets is how I build up my pages, how I create my layers. Or if I'm not doing a pocket, I might do a tuck spot or use a belly band. Okay, so I'm loving the way this is turning out. I think I might add this piece of pink lace to the bottom, again, just to soften this page up a little bit. And then I think after I do this, I'm going to work on some of the other sections of my journal pages. Still, you know, I still don't have a real clear idea of how I want to put all this together at this point. I'm just slowly starting to build up each page with my pockets and tags. So now I think I'm going to work on the inner section here, and I'm just going to kind of play around a little bit, add in some of those journaling cards. I'm going to take the bottom section of that guest check. I just kind of like the little added elements, you know, with the numbers there, and figure out where I want to place this. And that's the thing that I can't stress enough, is just taking bits and pieces of your trims and your papers and just working them onto some of your journal cards or onto sections of your flaps and pages and so forth. And then I'm going to cut down part of that vintage calendar planner page and just make sure I have a little section here where I can journal. I always like to make sure that I have a lot of places to journal on each page. So I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to arrange all of this, and I think what I'm going to do is take some of that vintage fabric and I'm going to cut a strip of that. So you guys will see me do that here in just a second. And so what I'm going to do is, after I cut my strip of fabric, I'm going to stitch it to the center of my half page here that I'm working on. And after I stitch it down, you will see that I will then have two hinges that I can work from. And so this was one of the things that I mentioned earlier, is how you can create hinges with fabric. And this is one of my little tricks of the trade, I guess you could say. So I hope you guys are learning from this whole process and from this video. And so I think what I'm going to do now moving forward is I'm going to let you guys kind of just kick back, grab a hot cup of coffee or tea, maybe even perhaps a glass of wine, and I'm going to finish this with some music playing and just let you guys kind of see how I play and how I arrange everything for my journal pages. And I will be back tomorrow with part 2. If you guys have not hit that subscribe button, please subscribe for more videos. And as always, thank you everyone for all your amazing support and for watching.